So today is Thursday. Tomorrow I go back to Gainesville for my port test. I am freaking out. I still don't know what's going to happen, and that scares me. Like, I think it would anybody. But I have something interesting to talk about, actually. So one of the classes I'm taking this semester is loss and bereavement. I know everybody goes through loss, and it's something that I personally have a very hard time dealing with. And I lost my grandfather, my grandmother, my dog, and just, like, the loss of things happening. Like, when you leave high school, when you leave undergrad, and you move out of the house, and stuff like that. Like, that stuff affects me. I don't really know why. I'm trying to figure out, though, why, which is why I'm taking this class. Just to kind of get a better understanding of why these things bother me and how, I can cope with them, come to terms with them, to then turn around and help others who are going through similar situations figure out ways that work for them, with really understanding the process. So today was my first day in class, and there's a lot of people there that I know, and, most of the people, if not most, all know about my illness, and that I'm, there's times where I come in with my port access, or, they follow me on social media, and they see, how I'm doing. So we were playing a grief and loss bingo. So we're just to learn about the different kinds of loss that people can face. And so we all had it face down on our desk, and she's like, okay, the first person to fill it out wins a prize. So there was an incentive. Everybody was gung-ho on winning. And then I flipped my card over. And so we could put our initials on the one in the middle, because we all went through it. It says you were born. That's your first kind of loss. So when I start looking at these other boxes, it took me a lot to realize that I have a lot of loss in my life, and a lot of it pertains to my illness. One of these says, has been a caregiver to someone with a life-threatening illness. No, that doesn't count anyway. Has prepared a living will or talked about one. I know that anytime we're in the hospital, at least I do when I go to get my infusion at the hospital, I have to sign, and that I've received information about a living will, that I've gone over it, and for my surgery and stuff like that, that was all brought up to me. Has talked with a parent or guardian about their end-of-life wishes. This is something that I've talked about with my husband, with my parents, because when I was septic and before I had my surgery, there was a lot of, we don't know what's going to happen. I was very, very sick, and, I wanted people to know what I wanted to happen in case something did happen. That way there was no questions asked of what, what life would be like. Has had an illness or injury that required someone else to help them. That was a big one. I mean, my dad had to hook me up with my TPN, help me with that stuff. There was times where I couldn't drive because of all the pain medication and nausea medication I was on. My mom would go with me to school. I was in a wheelchair. They would take me to class. She would sit outside the class or go run errands and then come back to take me out from school. So then I had to be home to then hook up. My dad slept in the room with me, so in case something happened with my pump occluding, and I wasn't, because with the medications I was really drugged, and I would sleep through anything. So if the pump occluded or something, or the TPN caused my blood sugar to drop, and I would need insulin in the middle of the night. So my dad would, wake me up to check the insulin, check the pump, switch the fluids to the steroid, to the antibiotic. My dad was my nurse hardcore for 3 to 6 months, maybe even longer, being like in the hospital time, because we do have to drive 2.5 hours to get to my GI. So I depended on my family a lot for that time, and I still do. So the one though that I thought was kind of interesting that a lot of people could not find somebody else to sign. Like, I signed so many of these cards that I was the only one in the entire class, has used a wheelchair. I have used a wheelchair, more than I care to admit. I mean, being on Cipro and the steroids, I had a very hard time with my joints. I had a very hard time just literally walking across the room. Anytime I go to Disney, if you know I'm gonna be there, I can't walk all that all the time. I do need the wheelchair. I mean, my body, the arthritis from the Crohn's has really taken a toll on me. And yeah, I get a lot of people being like, "Oh, I have a handicap pass." People look at me like, "Who's handicapped?" And that's when I tell people that, you know, not all these illnesses are visible. But that's a video for another day. But the teacher asked, you know, "Who's JM?" Because one girl had her entire card filled out. And, you know, I told her it was me. And she was like, "What? What is all this?" And I said, you know, it's my illness. It's my life. You know, and it got me thinking that I have lost a lot due to my diagnosis and, you know, learning to live with it and coming to terms with that relationship with my disease. And it is sad. I mean, I was diagnosed in high school, but I got really sick in like my early 20s, and about 6 months or so before my 21st birthday was when I had my surgery. And my goal was to be at Disney have a drink, and just be able to be at Disney and celebrate my birthday. But everybody in those early 20s was, you know, staying out late, partying, drinking, tailgates, and I wasn't able to do any of that because I was, you know, very sick and all these medications that you can't drink with, and, you know, the consequences of doing drugs and stuff like that. Not something I would do, but I think that my illness really played a role in keeping me sheltered. And, you know, I couldn't stay out late because I couldn't physically stay up late. I fall asleep, you know, at 9:30, which is right about now. But I truly wanted to tell you guys that, like, sitting in my class, I'm sitting here, you know, this class is geared towards teaching people how to cope with loss and, you know, death. And that's what I went into this class thinking, death was loss. And it really opened my eyes to see that there are just the different types of loss that we go through, and that I personally have gone through a lot of loss because of my illness. And yeah, there might be resentment there. Actually, there is resentment there. But how you have to move forward every day and just, you know, live with that loss and make up for it in other ways. And that's how I feel like this vlogging and my blog helps me make up for that. Because I know that there's other people who have the same loss or have even more loss than I've experienced. And, you know, watching this video and just understanding that sense of, you know, I get that feeling is why I do this. I feel like that's how I make up for that loss in my life. And I'm so thankful for this. And tomorrow I'll keep you guys updated with my port study and see how that goes. So fingers crossed that I don't need a new one. So thanks, guys.